I'm Angelique Roche, and I will be one of the people on stage today, but I will be a moderator for several panels, and I am really excited about this first panel that we are about to get into this morning. How are y'all? I think I woke up a little bit more. I don't even have to ask you to do that again. So this morning, I don't know if y'all have heard of a little villain that's from Marvel called Thanos. No? It's always like a 50-50. People love Thanos, people hate Thanos, people love to hate Thanos. But this morning, I'm really, really excited because we are going to have two of the masterminds, and one in particular who is responsible for the creation of Thanos, coming to the stage to talk about the evolution of the character from comic books onto the screen. I would like to welcome to the stage creator of Thanos, Starlin, and one of the masterminds behind how the look of Thanos was in comics, Ron Lim. They promised me they'd dance onto stage. You're welcome.
It's going to be one of those panels, sorry. I apologize ahead of time.
There's at least a 10 for me. Thank you for the dance. Now you get to coffee, which means you'll be dancing even more later. So welcome. Thank you for being here bright and early as our first panel this morning.
Thank you.
So we're gonna start out the gate. We're just gonna go straight for it. Thanos. He's a villain. He's in love. At least I think he's a villain. He may not be a villain. I don't know. You've heard of this guy. But a lot of people don't know that you came up with the idea, Jim, of Thanos in your psychology class. Can you give us a little bit more of an insight into the inspiration behind Thanos himself? And when you thought of the character, did you really think they would have the longevity that is had in comics to this day?
I was in junior college. We had a guest lecturer come in to talk about Freudian concepts. He hit on Thanos and Eros, the dark and light side of human nature. I thought it was a cool idea. Of course, I got latched onto the dark side, and took me 40 some odd years to come back around to do something with Eros, but we're working on that now. Basically, no, I had no idea that he would last anywhere near this long or go to where he is. When we started, basically comics could blow the socks off movies as far as special effects. We could draw anything, and they couldn't film anything other than flying saucers on wires and stuff like that. So I just figured, for the most of his life, he was a cult character. I was sort of a cult character also, working in the business and getting fired or quitting all the time. So basically, we went on for a long time, and then Josh Whedon decided to put him in the movies, and Thanos has become a superstar, and I've become part of his entourage.
Not a bad entourage to be in.
No, but we keep getting shot at.
So, Ron, while you weren't on Thanos from the beginning, you've worked together several times with Jim, and primarily being focused with your work on cosmic titles, have really specialized in that. A lot of people don't understand when it comes to comics. True comic book believers do, but like, comic books are more than just the writing. Comic books are the environment, it's the movement, it's how the characters are portrayed. What were your goals in carrying on the Mad Titan's legacy and the world around him when you had the opportunity to work together with Jim?
Well, you know, I grew up reading Jim stuff, so I mean, his biggest inspiration, so being able to work with him was awesome. So I was like stoked when he came on board Surfer. I was like, yeah. And then they announced, my editor said, hey, we're going to bring back Thanos with Jim. I'm like, what? So yeah, so it was kind of a dream for me. But in terms of goals, I just wanted to make sure I told the story as well as I could for Jim, you know, and kind of channel him through my art in a way. So I wanted to make sure it kind of gelled together, you know. So that was it.
You did a great job at it too, because I've worked mostly with Bernie Wrightson and Ron in collaboration. And when Bernie gave me something, it was never what I envisioned, but it always worked in the story. Ron always gave me almost exactly what I envisioned, because we have such a similar art style.
And that's really interesting. A lot of folks, when it comes to comics, are either partnered with an artist or they get to choose an artist. But is there something in particular in the way you work together? Were there any tricks or tips or habits that you formed when you were putting together your stories and your books?
He laughs at all my jokes.
He tells good jokes. I mean, like I said, I grew up reading Jim stuff, so I mean, in a way, I could kind of see his, your view of the stuff that you drew. That's what I grew up reading, so it was kind of easy for me. I think we, gelled together.
So Thanos has had a very long history, as we've kind of hit on a little bit today, that includes fights with a number of superheroes across the Marvel Universe, from the Avengers to the Guardians of the Galaxy. In your personal opinion, who would you say is Thanos' biggest challenge and why?
Thanos himself. When I first met Jack Kirby, he told me that the Hulk was stupidity. The harder you beat on it, the stronger it becomes. And so I thought, if I'm going to create a character, it's got to have a grounding like that. And Thanos is basically appetite that will never be appeased. He gets to the point where he gains omnipotence and he lets it slip away. I mean, god dang, his love interest is death. I mean, how much unreachable and unattainable is than a girlfriend named Death?
I mean, that's a hard girlfriend to please.
Yeah, we're talking major psychological damage here.
Ron, would you agree?
Yes.
So today it is nearly impossible. Like we were having this conversation backstage, like nearly impossible to walk into a comic book convention and not see someone cosplaying Thanos or wearing a Thanos-inspired shirt. I know I have a shirt that says "I survived the snap." Did you ever imagine that from the pages of the Invincible Iron Man number 55 in 1973 that Thanos would have the presence that he has now?
No, because directly after we did Iron Man 55, I did Iron Man 56, which Stan Lee hated, and he fired both Steve Gerber and I from the front book. So at that point, I thought my career was going to be kind of short-lived, but Roy Thomas took pity on me and gave me another book to do, which he didn't think was going to last very long, and that was Captain Marvel. So it's worked out pretty well.
So we were also talking about the fact that you've seen some really amazing cosplay of Thanos. This is kind of for both of you. What has been your most interesting or most fun or most peculiar cosplay that you've seen of Thanos recently?
Thanos. I guess the last one we saw was, I don't remember what show it was at, but he wore the movie version of the Thanos. And he looked just like the pretty close to the movie version. That was pretty impressive. That was good.
But this is New York, the big black guy?
No, that was a different guy.
Okay, he was really good.
I see him.
But we also had in New York, we had this woman who came up, and she was dressed in the whole armor and had prosthetic chin that was just perfect, and she may have been the most ambitious Thanos I've seen.
I like the word ambitious.
Yeah, it's diplomatic.
It takes a lot of work to put on all those prosthetics and become Thanos. That being said, as an artist, Ron, there are some major must-haves when you're creating a character, you're creating an environment. What do you feel are some must-haves when you're creating the perfect Thanos story?
Well, for me, just drawing more of how he carries himself in the story. Because I always saw him as kind of, even though he's evil, kind of more of a noble, regal kind of character. So I would try to draw him, even though he's doing this nasty stuff. I kept to keep him as, I don't know, as calm and collected as he only cracks a smile when something really bad's going down. So I mean, other than that, he's pretty stoic and he's pretty serious. So I keep him on that kind of level.
And what about his environment? Because that's one of the things that has really evolved throughout the years is that from the 70s moving on forward, his personal environment has become much more detailed, much more involved. Is there something in particular that you saw and envisioned in how you expanded out the world of Thanos?
Admission time. I'm the most self-indulgent artist and writer in the business. And so whenever I got an idea, it got thrown into the story. And Ron and I have just had to live with whatever whim I've had ever since then.
What's been the kookiest one?
Say that?
What's been the kookiest one?
I say the pool where Thanos can look in to find mystical things in Mr. Death's realm. We've gone back to that several times
Yeah.
just because it's weird and it's a good storytelling device.
Yeah.
That being said, were there any ideas that ended up on the drawing room floor?
Well, there was one point where I was going to have Thanos have a sidekick called Cosmic Cow and his sidekick Utter Madness, but we threw that one out.
There's
I
so
didn't know
much
about
more time in life. Please
Told
bring
you
that
this was going to be a different panel.
So both of you, Thanos has been in comics, movies, video games, and even animated. What has been for you the most memorable Thanos moment and why?
Throwing Gamora off that cliff. That was bloody heart-wrenching.
I think I got really sad. Gamora is one of
Yeah,
my
I knew
favorite
it was
characters.
coming, but still I felt this tightness in my chest when it was going on. I went, wow.
Yeah.
I understand Zoe Saldana had to leave the theater when she saw it.
Aw.
You know, because none of them got to see the movie before it actually showed up at the premiere. So I can't imagine what that must have been like.
That was a very devastating scene. So, that being said, how has it been seeing Thanos on the big screen?
The last 6 months have been extremely surreal. Like I said, he's gone from cult character. My initial reaction was being puffed up and egomaniac about the whole thing. Since then, I've gotten some gravity on it, and I mean, I really have to thank Feige and Russos and McFeely and Marcus and Brolin and everybody else who's involved in that, because they've taken this little guy, this little two-dimensional character I had, and they've put him into the realm of Darth Vader and Moriarty and things that are going to last beyond me. They accomplished something that I couldn't have done on my own, and I'm going to be eternally grateful to them about that.
And it's really cool because I understand that in the beginning, Thanos was actually a skinny dude. Like, he wasn't, like, in the first concept, Thanos was not this big, huge linebacker of a villain that we have now throughout the comics and onto the screen.
Well, there's been misconception that I ripped off Darkseid from the New Gods to do Thanos. And the truth was, when he first started off, he was very skinny, and he had that visor, and if I was ripping off any of the New Gods, it was Metron. And, you know, he looked we have some early drawings of him, and he looks very much like Metron with a scraggly chin. Like with a 3-day, he needs a shave or something.
So how did we get to this Thanos that we know and love to hate so much today?
Basically, when I showed Roy Thomas the sketches I had, it was actually drawings I got in my portfolio to get work at Marvel to begin with. And I told him we were going to put him in the Iron Man story we're doing. He said, plump him up a little bit more. And later on, Roy said, he told this story and said, yeah, if we're going to rip off any of the New Gods, we're going to do Darkseid. And that's where the whole Darkseid thing came from. But basically, I plumped him up a little bit, and then oddly enough, as the years went on, both Darkseid and Thanos started inflating about the same time. So they're both the size of the Hindenburg now, as opposed to what they were originally.
So they just both decided to hit the gym. Great, great, great.
They had a lot of bananas they were eating, that sort of thing, you know.
So were there any challenges for you, Ron, as you're thinking about this massive character, particularly as both in size and in reputation, as it came to the other characters and the rest of the environment and making sure that there was this perspective that was in the comics that was honored with the size of Thanos?
You mean in terms of other characters and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I kept him kind of Hulk size, I would suppose. So mine was a little smaller than the movie version, I guess. He's grown in the past few years, so not only just his musculature, but his actual size. I mean, they draw him huge in the comics now. When I drew him, I kept him more Hulkish levels, I guess you'd say.
He just had a growth spurt. It's totally
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
No
Finally.
big deal.
More shoulders, less head.
So it's not a stretch to say that both of you do what you love, and you have made careers out of writing and creating amazing stories in comics. How did you both get into comics in the first place?
Want to take that first?
You mean how I just get into comics in general?
No, like as a kid, like because
Oh.
obviously you're a fan of comics
Sure.
as well.
Yeah. Well, for me, I read comics as a kid. I read like Archie and that kind of stuff. And then one day my parents brought home a Fantastic Four comic. I was like, what's this? It's totally different than anything I've ever seen before. And I was like, hold on a minute, this is not funny. You know, it's actually like a science fiction story. It was Fantastic Four. And so that sucked me in right away. I mean, after that, I was like, no more of this Archie stuff. I want the superhero stuff, you know. I still like Archie, but, you know, yeah. Marvel.
With me, I was raised in the cultural wonderland of Detroit, and so comics were my art. You know?
Detroit is out there repping
Yes,
for you right now.
I'm beginning to be able to see that there are people out here, and I see somebody waving about Detroit.
We see you, Detroit. We see you.
So my dad worked at Chrysler as a draftsman, and he figured one of his fringe benefits was, at the end of the day, stuffing his briefcase with as much tracing paper, number 2 pencils, and masking tape as he could. And he would bring it home, and he thought he was going to use it on his woodworking hobby. Instead, I found I could trace comic book characters and put them up on the wall, and that was the beginning of my drawing. It went from pastime to hobby to obsession to a profession. Wow. And then I showed up at Marvel around 72, 71, something like that, just as a time that they were expanding from like 8 books to 20. And they were hiring anybody who could cross the state line and hold a pencil. And I just barely qualified. And I've been working in it ever since.
And it's a really cool dynamic, right? Because you're both a writer and you actually can do the art yourself. Is that a challenge for you when working with artists because you feel like you have something, like we kind of touched on it earlier, that there's something in your head? Or do you find it more fun and engaging?
I haven't done it a lot with other artists, but I've always come into it figuring this is a collaboration and it's not going to be what I do. I approach watching the movie the same way. It's not what I do, it's somebody else's. This is interpretation. And so when Bernie did his sensational but odd Batman, I loved it. I mean,
Yeah.
Ron didn't do the surfer like I would do, but I still loved it. You know, it was just a matter of coming in with the right headspace, and once you can do that, and as long as they told the story. I've worked with a couple of artists who just couldn't tell a story to save their life, and they were just nightmares to work with because they usually came along with massive egos. And so, you know, and, it works beautifully, and you just keep going at it.
Well, Ron, we've heard Jim's pathway into doing comics for a living. What about, you have an interesting story as well.
Mine's more typical. I didn't live in New York. I live in California, so I had nowhere to go to Marvel. So I just submitted samples through the mail, got the rejection letter one after another. It was cool. They'd say, you know, close, but, you know, keep trying kind of thing, right? So I get these rejections. Then finally I started going to conventions and showing them my portfolio, and then finally at WonderCon, I got hired there by Tom DeFalco was editor-in-chief.
So is there anything out there for inspiring artists, for aspiring writers that you feel like hat tips, must-haves, or just advice? Because I know there are some aspiring artists out there right now. We have artists who are literally in the space that both of you were in when you were younger. Like, what would you say to them right now?
You want to take that first?
All right. I would just say not give up. So, I mean, that's all I did. I just kept drawing, getting rejection letters, whatever. But I just kept trying. I mean, and just keep drawing or writing or whatever you want to do, and just keep focusing on that.
My advice is basically draw and write everything and look at everything. Don't just look at comics. Please don't look at just the comics, because all you do is that way is produce bad comics. If you look at other things, you bring in other influences and you improve the medium and the profession. Basically, soak it all in, and if you're drawing, anything you draw new becomes part of it. If you draw a chair and never drew a chair before, you know how a chair was put together. And so you own it at that point. And drawing people in capes is nice, but it's only going to take you so far.
So I want to do something fun. Do you want to do something fun with me?
Not a chance.
So I guess
Okay,
so
talk me into it.
All right. So I want to do some question to answer because I know some folks out there have some really good questions about Thanos, about art, about comics, about, you know, life itself. That's all you, Ron. I don't have the answer to that. So if you have any questions out there, we have a mic over right here on this aisle to the right there. Don't rush. Absolutely. And please, so I have one rule. If you have a question, you have to give us your name. And then you have to say who you're directing the question to. And it's okay to form a line for questions.
Or we can sit here and hope that somebody comes.
Well, no, it's a little low, so I'm gonna pick it up. Hey,
We can't see you from here.
hi, Jim. This is Jason Buhalis from Electric Prism, and I heard you were in town. And Jason, yeah, and I figured I'd come today and say hello and ask you a question or two. As far as the heroic aspects for both of you, when you started creating, was there a calling for you heroically to design something from your inner voices or your desires, heroic presences within you to create something that is a part of who you are intrinsically as a human being? And how would you pass that message on to the youth of today in the absence of mentors, and where these heroes become the mentors of the youth and of the adults? I see these big kids, adults dressed in wonderful costumes throughout the day. So what kind of a message as creators of heroes and villains would you share with everyone?
Character is contradiction. Nobody's just one thing. Move it around, try and make it different. Be self-indulgent. As long as they keep giving you work, be self-indulgent. If they stop giving you work, reevaluate, and just try and do the best.
What Jim said.
Okay.
That's pretty profound. I'm here for it. Don't forget to announce who you are.
Hi, I'm Sabrina.
And I'm Sophia.
Okay, so
Well, we were wondering, do you think, like for everyone over there, do you think that Thanos has reached like the status of a god?
because in Infinity War, Loki said that Thanos would never be a god. But do you think he's achieved that status at this point? Loki seems
Oh,
There's
that's a very good question.
there's like 3 different Thanoses. There's the one that's in Marvel Comics. There's one in the movies, and there's mine.
Oh, wait, do you have a third Thanos? There's a lot of Thanos.
Yeah, I mean, basically, when I came back to work at Marvel, Marvel said, forget what we're doing, just go off and do your own thing. And so there was a third Thanos. There's 3 of them running around.
That's a heck of a personality disorder that's going on.
Yeah, I think the movie one, he borders on godhood. I can't tell you about the Marvel Comics one because I don't read those things. I think mine sort of surpassed most godhood, and I mean, he's reached omnipotence on a number of occasions, and he deals with astral beings that I don't think even Odin did all that often. So it's a different answer for each one. How's that?
All right.
All right.
Another
thank you.
question. How are you? How
Pardon?
are you today?
How am I today?
How you doing?
I'm doing fine. I think
Okay,
that's what you
that's
asked.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Connor, and this is a question for Ron Lim. This is regarding a different character that you worked on,
Okay.
Venom.
Venom. Oh yeah, Venom.
Given that the recent movie that came out was mainly based off of Lethal Protector, which you did part of the artwork for, I was curious for what your thoughts on the Venom movie were.
I actually enjoyed it. I thought it was a fun movie. I was surprised. I didn't know what going in, what to expect. 'Cause I thought, you know, I didn't hear anything about it. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, they changed the story obviously for a movie, but I thought they did a good job. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Yvonne, and as artists, before you started your craft and became professionals, how many hours a day did you devote to building your skills and just drawing?
Well, for me, it was, I'd get done with school and I'd head for my basement studio and stay there until dinner and then probably afterwards. And when I was in the service, I was sneaking off to draw whenever I had a chance. So I couldn't tell you hours per day or anything like that, but I enjoyed drawing more than I did breathing, so it was a lot.
Yeah, same for me. I mean, I spent most of my time, if I wasn't in school or whatever, drawing. I mean, and doing samples or whatever it was, but I drew all the time.
Okay, thank you.
And a quick follow-up to that, how much time do you do like now, like on a daily basis?
It depends on the project. If it's more complicated, then I'll spend more time. But it's just about 8 hours, maybe 8, 9 hours around there. And it's spread out through the day, though. I don't draw continuous in one shot. I'll take a break for a couple hours or 5 hours.
All right.
Hi, my name is Bree. My question is for Mr. Starlin. I'm a big fan of Adam Warlock, and I want to know what your vision was for him when you first brought him back and like the grand scheme of things in the comics.
Okay, like I said earlier, I always like to get some kind of grounding, some one sentence that will tell who the character is. And before I did Adam Warlock, I was working on a character named Captain Marvel. And Captain Marvel I took from being a warrior and turned him into sort of a holy man figure. And so when I quit that book and Roy and I agreed that I would do Warlock. Warlock was already a holy man. So there seemed to be only one way to go with that. I needed to turn him into a schizophrenic, paranoid, suicidal maniac. And as it happens, I think it worked out pretty well.
Thank you.
All right.
Hi, I'm Julia, and I'm one of those people who fell in love with Thanos on the screen.
Oh, you're sick.
I know. But my question was, how do you feel you seeing like Thanos on the screen translating to the character that Josh Brolin played?
It's been an interesting experience because he's not exactly what I put down. There are bits and pieces of him that show through. Brolin brought a lot to it on his interpretation of the lines. The actual production forced the character into different spots that he wouldn't have gone otherwise. I think overall it was a terrific job, considering the fact that they didn't have all the characters from the Infinity Gauntlet, and they had 18 movies worth of continuity they had to deal with. I'm very impressed with what came out, and more than happy to live with it.
Thank you.
Hey, my name's Nico. Just kind of going off of that, I just have a question for both of you. If there was like another person other than Josh Brolin you think could have portrayed Thanos better?
I had no idea that they were going to do the whole motion capture thing and that. I thought it was just going to be a voiceover job. Brolin was never on my watch list at all. I was thinking somebody with a gravelly voice, like a post-cancerous Arnold Schwarzenegger. I thought Idris Elba would have been terrific for her voice. But now, after just watching the way he moved around alone, I mean, he just went and studied those comic books, and he's not that big a guy, but he looks so enormously large, just the way he moves, not from the fact that they blew him up CGI so he's 9 feet tall. He moves like a lumbering brute in that movie, and I just thought that was incredible looking.
I didn't have any idea. who could play him. Because I thought it was like Jim said, I thought it was gonna be a CGI character that they would do a voiceover kind of thing. But yeah, so I have no actors in mind.
Pee Wee Herman?
Yeah, he'd be sweet.
He was my third choice.
That'd be awesome.
Hello, I'm Shannon.
Hi.
And I'm Vincent. And I was
Hello.
And I was wondering, why does Thanos has purple skin?
Too many grapes.
Yeah, maybe
It was just it was a good color that went with the rest of his costume. It was a complementary color to all that blue and gold. And that's the truth, actually.
I'm very excited about this answer now.
How do you pull this mic down?
There we go.
Why does he have lines on his chin?
These are all very important questions.
He got caught in a car door.
Oh, that makes sense.
It's rough. Thank you for your question.
They're going to take my job from me. These are very important questions.
And I'm treating them very seriously.
As you should.
Hi, my name is Saham.
And I'm Omar.
We were wondering, what's Thanos' foot size?
Oh. What's Thanos' foot size? I'm sure his boots are all custom, though, so this is a guess here.
When I was drawing him, I decided his feet and head should be about the same size.
What?
Yeah. So I never exactly set out the size, but he's about 9 feet tall, probably somewhere around a 25. Maybe a 30.
25, 30. This is so we now understand that he ate too many grapes. He got his chin stuck in a car door, and his feet are 25, 30. These are very important answers that you will now be able to take home to your friends for trivia.
I'm taking away all the magic. Sorry, guys. Captain America.
Hi.
Get me out of this.
Okay, here's my question.
Wait, what's your name first?
Oh, my name is Joshua, sorry. So writing is something that everybody can do, but very few can truly excel at it, and you're one of the few that excels at it. So what would you attribute your writing talent to?
So writing is a talent that a lot of people do, but not a lot of people excel at. But you have excelled at it. So what do you contribute that success to? I got it right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Memory.
Reading a lot, self-indulgence, overconsumption, deadlines, needing to get a paycheck.
Those are good motivators.
Paychecks are important.
Getting nagged by editors. I could go on all day. It's just life in general, wandering around and getting ideas and trying to get them down on paper somehow or another.
That's great.
No real secrets. It's just a lot of hard work.
Thank you.
Next up.
Hi, my name's Elisa, and my question is, how do you deal with writer's block?
How do you deal with writer's block?
I don't.
Never had it.
I'm so jealous right
Mostly
now.
I have trouble finding the time to get things done.
I don't write, so.
Well, and I think that's another big question. Like, how many projects generally are you working on any given point in time? If as you're doing these things.
Right now, I'm remastering the coloring on Dreadstar. Have a short story I have to write for Shockwave. And I'm toying around with a series idea that I have involving a female character, which I've never done as a lead before. And I'm editing the third book in a novel series.
No big deal. No big deal. What about you, Ron?
Well, schedule depends on, it's so erratic. I mean, sometimes I can be working on 3 projects in 1 month, other times just 1. So it all depends. It's so random, I can never figure it out.
So maybe you don't have writer's block, but how do you get, what are the things, what are the elements that you have to have? Is there a certain movie? Is there a certain music? Is there certain places, a certain type of pens or papers or a time of day that work best for your creative processes?
Well, first I have to read the script, and I have to think about it, kind of figure out what I gotta do. But I work best at night, so I mean, I always work at night because it's quiet, no one can disturb me. No emails, no calls, no nothing. It's quiet. I get like probably double the amount of work done at night than I do during the daytime. And then, but yeah, I watch movies, play video games, read. So I mean, it's just whatever it takes.
What about you, Jim?
When I was drawing, I used to have a TV here and watch a lot of movies while I was working. Not so much now because writing, you have to actually concentrate. Yeah, I realized, after all this time, I realized I was never thinking when I was drawing.
Wow.
Yeah, it was always turned on to something else. Okay, we got this all worked out ahead of time. Just get through it, yeah. Basically, I put the phone inside a drawer and close the studio door, and that's it. That's all it takes.
There you go. Well, we may not have a cure for writer's block. We do have some tips on setting environment. All right, so we're going to take the last two questions, and then we're going to close out. Yes, Thor.
Yes, hi. I was wondering what race is Thanos?
What race is Thanos?
What alien race?
There's an answer to this.
Well, originally I had him as a Titan, which was a separate breed entirely. Marvel has since then put him as part of the Eternals. So I guess he's an Eternal.
There you go.
Does that qualify as a race?
We'll go with it for today.
Yeah, we'll go with that as a race.
There's a longer conversation in another panel that probably is going to come from that.
I mean, he's purple, so that really throws everything off.
Everything. It's amazing how choices just change all the complexities. Last question. It's all yours.
Thank you. I'm Susan, and my question is, have you ever gotten your inspiration about any of the characters based on a fan? More, your inspiration from a fan as opposed to just thinking about a character?
I'd say no, but I'm working with a couple of assistants right now, and both of which are strangely named Shannon. And working with them over the last few months, I've actually gotten some inspiration from them on this female character I'm trying to develop right now. So not from living people, but you get inspirations from all sorts of things. The character Eon from Captain Marvel, he was inspired by a grease stain on a paper bag.
Well, there you go.
Thank you.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Not really. I mean, I work from scripts I get from the Marvels. I mean,
yeah.
Or DC or whoever. But so I don't really have any kind of influence in terms of from a fan or something.
So one of the last questions I love to ask creatives, because it's always fun to see who they're reading from right now, are there any particular comics, books, movies, musicians that you are really excited about or reading or listening to right now that you'd like to share?
I'm reading a book called They're There right now, which is hitting me on a lot of things. It's about urban Native Americans, and it's by a guy named Tommy Orange. That's got me thinking about a number of different things, but comic books, to be honest, I don't really look at them too much anymore. I've just got other things that I'm working on, trying to zero in on novels more, and I get influenced by everything. Walking down the street, watching a movie, talking with Ron.
Yeah, I mean, not anything specific for me either, really. I mean, I still read comics, but it's just a various bunch of different stuff. And then I don't read novels at all.
See, the companies don't give the free books anymore, and so if we have to pay for them.
So we only pick the ones we want to read.
cartoonists are very cheap.
Well, I want to thank you both so very much for both listening to my questions, but also so many fans' questions out there. I know there are probably a billion more, but that is all the time we have for today.